Hey everyone, what's up? You know, I was reading an article, or at least a journal yesterday on DeviantArt. I'm not going to say who it's from. But this person talked about, this fan mostly like me, is a Sonic Sally supporter, or a Sonally supporter, whatever you want to call it. SonSal, whatever. And, you know, when I read this journal, and I'll provide a link to it in the description box if I can. Basically, they mentioned how when the soft retcon or reboot occurred, they were willing to basically give it a chance to see what it would be like. And at first, everything seemed okay. You know, all the characters were back. All the characters. I mean, basically, the freedom fighters themselves were back together as a team. Sally, them being a Sally fan because of Sonic Sally, was no longer a robot. They were happy about that. So they were all cool with that until they noticed that when Sonic would go around and embrace everybody and how happy he was to see them, they would not embrace him back because at first they didn't understand what had gotten into him, which is hold on. Which, from a story standpoint, is very understanding because they had no idea, they had no memory at the time of what had happened or what they had been through previously. So, long story short, as I mentioned in my review about it, Nicole ends up being the key because she and Sonic initially are the only ones that recall the previous timeline. So basically she being the key ends up restoring everybody's memories, from Tails to Rotor to Antoine to Bunny, thus rekindling and reuniting the marriage of Bunny and Antoine, to finally Amy and Sally. Now, the one thing this fan looked at when he put this journal together was the fact that even though Sally got back her memories, had that breakdown that she did, but then with the help of her friends realized, you know what, you're right, what happened in the past, that really wasn't me, I gotta move forward and make sure it doesn't happen to anybody else. So, long story short, despite that, this fan was okay with what they saw. They were okay with it, but then they started noticing something that they were hoping was going to happen, but has yet to happen, and then found out will probably never happen, and that is no official romantic reuniting of Sonic and Sally. And when they read about why this was happening, a lot of other fans, like a lot of other fans that were hoping to see Sonic and Sally back together, questioned basically the logic behind it. Because the logic, according to Ian Flynn and several people at Archie, was the reason they weren't shipping or putting Sonic and Sally back together as a couple was to prevent shipping wars. Yeah, like that's going to happen. And that is one fault that I think Ian Flynn needs to realize. Now, I do understand that they want to make this era of the comics more like the games. So basically Sonic, is more like a free spirit, has no time for romance kind of deal. But this is something that, this one fan basically looks at looks at Sonic and Sally as basically being not just one of the best comic book couples in the past 20 years, but one of the signatures, one of the key elements, if you will, one of the pieces of the puzzle that keeps the puzzle together, if not the heart of that piece. And for them to see and notice that Archie Comics, Ian Flynn, are not going to be going in that direction doesn't sit well with them. In addition to the fact that the other thing they don't like is you got all these other characters, from Julie Sue, Mina Mongoose, Hershey Cat, to many others, aka Pender characters, who are not going to be around anymore. And thus, the story arcs that involve them, are going to go completely unfinished. And even story arcs that didn't involve them are going to go unfinished. And these are a few flaws, most with the Sonic Sally not being a couple flaw anymore at the top, that this fan, among a lot of other fans, looks at as being something that Archie Comics, and more specifically Ian Flynn and any other writer on that staff, has to improve on and work with. And I can understand how fans feel. I really do. I mean, am I kind of disappointed that you're not going to have a Sonic-Sally relationship in the book? Yeah, I'm a little disappointed, but I did get a little bit of a glimpse of hope. I think it was, what was it? Sonic Universe, I believe. Either Sonic Universe or Mega Man. Mostly Sonic Universe. That's what it was. Mostly Sonic Universe. Or was it Sonic the Hedgehog? I can't remember. No, it was Sonic Universe. That's what it was. There was a scene where Sonic was running and he was carrying Sally. And I said this in my review, I said this was a la Sonic Sat AM. Because that's what it was specifically, right off the bat. No one could deny that. So I look at that and I see a glimpse of hope. Perhaps, maybe Sega might lessen the grip on the comic, because if Sega is going to come out and say, hey, well, sorry, we've acted like a bunch of jerks to you guys and we haven't listened to you guys, maybe they'll lessen the grip on the book, and maybe we might get that Sonic Sally dynamic that we want to see. Again, though, it may take time. True, as some fans have pointed out in the comment section of this journal on DeviantArt to this fan, that there are petitions to get things back to the way they were, or at least get them to more of a state that we understand and we can accept, or they can at least understand and accept. That might help too. But the way I'm looking at it, is like this. Right now, we just got to deal with what's going on. We just got to deal with the way they're doing the book right now, and maybe in time we might get something that we've been waiting for as a payoff. We'll just have to wait and see. But I can understand that. Now, the one thing this fan said is that, like other fans, and this is a true fact, like other fans out there, they're just going to go back and stick with the original comics, or with the original run, which was basically issue 1 all the way to about 247. And that was it. They're just going to go with the first 247 issues, and that's it. They're not going to deal with what they're seeing here. They're not. And some, in some cases, don't even deal with the issues that go up to 247. As a matter of fact, some go with the first 224 issues or 229 issues. That's what they deal with. They don't deal with just 230 or anything because of the ending. They mostly deal with the first 229 issues. And if anybody at Archie's wondering and watching and wondering why, anybody at Archie Comics is watching this and wondering why fans would do that, it's mainly because they're not totally satisfied with what you gave them here. Because yes, it's great that you want to kind of straighten things out, make things less confusing, but in a sense, you're kind of going in that same direction, but you don't notice it. So, but the other thing is you got a lot of fans out there that do support a dynamic couple like Sonic and Sally, and yet you're not giving them that as an anchor for the book. I mean, the story arc previous writers, even Ian Flynn himself, have proven that you can have Sonic and Sally as a couple, but still have Sonic somewhat as a free spirit. But again, that's up to Archie Comics. That's up to you guys at Archie Comics to really think about. But again, will we ever see Sonic and Sally back in the Sonally pairing again, SonSal pairing again in the book? Maybe. Will it happen with it before this year's out? Maybe not. Will it happen in 2016 going forward? Who knows? We'll just have to wait and see. But that's all I'm going to say on it. And basically, that's just a bit of a response to this journal that, again, I'll try to provide the link to here on DeviantArt. So that this individual, along with anybody else, can get a better understanding as to why we don't have Sonic and Sally right now in the comics as a couple. So hopefully this helped out, and I will talk to y'all later. I've got to get ready for work.